So, having just done my video on the Sword of Doom, I thought it would be a good time to make the next video about the film trilogy that the Sword of Doom was based on. And having just finished it, I'm actually pretty surprised just by how powerful of a story this really is. It's much more than just a story about an evil samurai. It really ends up making you question all of your life choices and just whether or not you've done more good than bad. And is it really possible, or are you even allowed to come back when your scale is tipped more towards the bad? わしは頼まれて人を切るのではない。切りたくなるから切るまでだ。So first, I'd like to say that I received this trilogy of films from SamuraiDVD.com for purpose of review. SamuraiDVD.com is your one-stop shopping for both classic and new samurai films. Most of these films you won't find anywhere else, and the films that I've gotten have all had excellent subtitles and picture transfers. So don't forget to go out and check out SamuraiDVD.com. So, like I mentioned in the Sword of Doom video, this story is based on a long-running novel by Kaizen Nagasato. It ran on various newspapers from 1913 to 1941. It was titled Daibosatsu Toge, or Great Bodhisattva Pass. It all started when the author was 24 years old, and it was never finished, continuing for more than 20 years. It was very much the author's life work, being heavily influenced by Zen Buddhism. Daibosatsu Toge is the name of a pass near Tokyo, but the term Bosatsu, or Bodhisattva, means a being that stands at the border of a man's world and that of Buddha in order to save the former by letting it pass into the latter. Toge, or pass, therefore stands to mean the turning point. So even though Daibosatsu Toge is an actual geographical name, it has to do with the story itself and at the same time serves as a symbol to this novel. And this particular story has no hero, only a villain. So what ends up standing out the most in this entire story is the main character, Ryunosuke. He was born a swordsman that's kinda devilish in nature, yet is in full possession of man's weaknesses. He's not necessarily the hero, but instead a villain. And yet, he shows signs of remorse and guilt for the crimes that he commits throughout the entire story, and yet he's just never able to get better. When you think about it, it's really a tragic story and just a really tragic main character. The fact that he has such great skills with the sword is kind of the reason why he ends up committing so many murders. And therefore, his skill becomes a curse. So, for anyone that's seen the classic film The Sword of Doom, you might have noticed that the film ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. Not many people know that it was originally going to be a trilogy of films, but due to the over-the-top nature of the ending, the other two films were cancelled. But luckily, if you wanted to finally find out what happened at the end of that film, you're kind of in luck. As I already stated, the Sword of Doom was actually a remake of a trilogy that came out 6 years before that, and the name of the film trilogy was titled Satan's Sword. So, the first film in the Satan Sword trilogy plays out almost beat for beat to the Sword of Doom. It begins the same with Ryunosuke killing the granddad just because he wanted to practice his swordsmanship. We get the tournament where Ryunosuke kills his opponent. We get the iconic battle in the woods. We get the snow fight. And we even get him freaking out, going berserk at the end. But the ending, unfortunately, doesn't have the big massacre scene. Instead, it just ends with him fighting one-on-one with Hyoma. I'm not gonna lie, almost everything in this film pales in comparison to Okamoto's The Sword of Doom. But it's really not fair to compare the two. Okamoto, for one, is one of the greatest Japanese directors. And Tetsuya Nakadai is just one of the greatest actors of all time, and just no one can outperform him. But with that said, I'll say Raizo Ichikawa gives just about the next best performance to Nakadai's Ryunosuke. Raizo can be described as the Bruce Lee of Chanbara. He died very young as an actor and just had so much potential. What I really liked about his version of Ryunosuke is that he shows more human traits like guilt and remorse. From just watching The Sword of Doom, I never really realized just how bad it hurt Ryunosuke that he killed his wife and abandoned his child. And he even makes a comment about not wanting his kid to grow up and take up the sword just like him and his family did before him, saying that only bloodshed will come out of being a skilled swordsman. So the second film picks up right where the first one left off. But we end up getting a bit of a cop-out. There's no big fight with Hyoma. Both of them survive with lots of dead bodies that live in the ground. And the rest of the film will take us on a journey through central Japan. Ryunosuke ends up escaping and tries to settle down as a teacher in the dojo. But then he becomes involved with the Tenshu group, which is a small group of rebels that the Tokugawa shogunate is hunting down. In the meantime, he gets involved with a woman that reminds him of the wife that he killed in the previous film. And we also find out what happened to his son that he abandoned. We also watch Hyoma hunt down Ryunosuke to try to get his revenge. In the end, karma does catch up to Ryunosuke and he becomes blind. And he seeks refuge in the Dragon God Mountain, where he will once again face off with his sworn enemy. But of course that gets interrupted until the next film. I will say though, I enjoyed the second film the most just because it took the main character and just brought him to a place I wasn't expecting. And it even brought him to a place I wanted him to go. I wanted to see a person be able to change. And he actually tries to start a new life and become a better person. But this film also showed that there's stronger powers in the world and that karma does exist and there is some justice beyond what man-made laws have created. And because of this, Ryunosuke's actions in the first film result in him leading nowhere but down. There's no rise and fall for this guy, it's just fall. Even when he tries to settle down in a dojo and begin a new life, there's always bad luck. It gives you the question on whether or not a man such as himself can be redeemed in the end. But he doesn't seem to think he even deserves it. He's not really one to wallow in self-pity, but his monologues do have a tinge of hopelessness and resignation. But he just seems more determined to keep pushing deeper into his own hell. And this will eventually climax in the third and last film, where the message basically is that there's no coming back once you've gone too far down. The overall feeling of the film leaves you not wanting to go down the same path as Ryunosuke. And by that, I mean, I don't want to make the same poor choices that will make it more and more difficult to come back. I'll say from my personal life experiences, I do believe that choices do have consequences, and committing bad choices often do come back in what some would refer to as karma. This isn't to say there's no coming back and changing your life for the better, but your past does overall affect your future, and it's wise to always strive to better yourself sooner rather than later. So overall, I would say if you like the Sword of Doom and you're curious about the rest of that story, then check out this trilogy. Otherwise, the Sword of Doom is the much better film, and even though it's incomplete, it sort of ends with the same message. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you want to find this film trilogy, you can pick up the box set on SamuraiDVD.com.